Yep.
Okay, so no one came back early, so I'm assuming that you use until the very last second to wrap up. So let's start with breakout room number 1. So we had Mark, Marco, Alex, and Lisa. No, Adriana. Yes. Actually,
Andrew,
sorry.
myself.
Andrew, that's right. So who was volunteered or volunteered to put together a summary?
That's the task we didn't assign. And so as the scribe, I'll nominate somebody else to do that. Marco
Don't
or
speak all at
Alexander, do you want to
once.
speak for us?
Yeah, sure. I can have a crack at it. Andrew did such a good job of scribing it all and setting it all up on Miro. I feel like I'm stealing his thunder a little bit, but I'll try.
Did you want me to share that again to the whole group? Are you going to do that, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, I can bring the board if you guys want me to. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So just bear with me a sec. Yep. Here we go. Sharing screen. That's the one. Can you see now?
Yep, got it.
Okay. So that's number 1. Yeah.
It's not very clear, but
you can just see a little slice now.
Let me increase a little bit. Let's start with quadrant number 1. Agree, disagree, and feedback. Is that better?
I've got it up on my screen, so I can just talk through it and people can follow on the board if that's easier.
And you can share your screen as well, Marco, if you like.
Okay.
You should be able to share your screen. So I'll stop sharing mine, and you can share your own. That will make it easier. Beauty. I can see your screen now.
All right, perfect. So I guess the first place to start would be that we added a little bit into the top box as well, because a lot of the conversation that we were having around was kind of helping customers and leaders understand what's really critical and therefore kind of where effort should be focused. So, you know, it was about trying to make the organization and people around you kind of more mindful and purposeful as well. And then onto what the kind of agree, disagree was. So I think overall the general feeling was that we very much agreed with the statement. As I said, a lot of the conversation centered around deciding what's critical, you know, what's critical for me, but not the organization. I think the first point that Andrew made was that it's kind of, you know, easy to say these things, but when the pressure builds and customers are saying, no, you kind of have to do it all. You know, I understand that you're saying we can't do this and this, but I'm saying that if we don't do all of it, then, you know, the business is going to fail. And all of a sudden you kind of find yourself just saying yes, which is again kind of what led to us adding in that little bit to the statement. So yeah, and obviously avoid firefighting, but recognize that sometimes it's just a kind of necessary part of the job, and, you know, balancing priorities, and, you know, not just focusing on yourself, but also focusing on the people around you is kind of an important thing as well, to make sure that you can actually implement some of these things. Cool. So onto the challenges. You're making some last minute edits there, Andrew. So I'll leave that one.
I realized I hadn't finished that sentence.
Oh, right. It's always a thing. You're proofreading something and you're like, oh, I must have just got distracted because I just didn't finish that sentence at all. But yeah, so obviously the challenge I kind of already touched on a little bit, but, you know, deciding what is urgent, like how do you know what's urgent? And sometimes the thing that is urgent isn't urgent until some other thing happens. So That's always going to be a big challenge. And kind of getting that pressure that's building from people around you and the organization and priorities coming up, where you're kind of in this position where you feel like, I want to be strategic and I want to not succumb to the shiny object syndrome, but I feel like I kind of have to say yes, because, otherwise I'm going to, lose my job, or I'm going to lose credibility or something like that.
Thanks, Marco. And I was floating around the rooms, and I heard, I think room 2 might have some comments to make about that, because it sounds like a common theme, ability to say no, saying yes. And so I might actually, thanks so much, Marco. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add in terms of the summary? Any other
I think yeah,
points?
Yeah.
One thing that we discussed that I thought was interesting was, is there's some of this stuff, the way this is written is almost like some of it is managing projects, like a portfolio of projects, where sometimes the most critical project that we can be, working on as leaders is coming back to the last sentence here, which is, what's the most critical thing that I can do to provide our teams with the conditions and support they need to thrive. So that may be my most critical project on the day-to-day basis.
It's the overarching actually goal that has a flow effect to everything else. Thanks, Mark. I'd love to hear from everyone else, but just give a chance to rule number 2. So rule number 2, Lisa had to excuse to pick up her daughter. So you have David, Stephen. I don't know what happened with Adriana. She left and came back.
Had to go.
Okay, so Stephen, David, who is the spokesperson for rule number 2?
I'll do it if you like.
Please do.
So I guess, a lot of the comments are around the same, but we sort of took this 2 ways, this manifesto. One, it's, around what projects should we pick up, but also as a leader, what should we be focusing on, right? So it's those 2 types of levels. I think if I looked at the 80-20 rule, I think we all agreed that, we need to focus on the critical that align to the strategic needs of the organization, and also deliver outcomes. There will always be a need for firefighting, but I think it's about what Mark was saying, surrounding yourself with teams that complement you, right? And that you can then go, right, firefighting is being handled by those teams. So you have faith in those teams to deliver that. You might want to tip your toes in every now and then, but I think the key thing that we were talking about was, how do you elevate yourself up so that you're adding value to the organization and you're focusing on those strategic projects that are really aligned, and you can then be laser focused on them. Shiny syndrome, object syndrome, I think in some way, I think it's important to keep connected. And if I took that 80-20% rule, it's really interesting to look at those shiny projects, because they help you imagine what could be. So, I've got an augmented reality lab in my building. I like to dip my toes in every now and then because it allows me to dream. But my focus is on that 80%, which is those strategic projects that are adding value to the organization and delivering our strategic outcomes. But I think the other ability is to say, actually, no, I can't actually keep looking at these projects. These are the projects that I've got.
Thanks, David. Stephen and Alex, you haven't been around for a few roundtables, so welcome back. Love to hear from you. So who'd like to go first? Faster to unmute yourself. We have 15 minutes left.
Yeah, so it's an interesting conversation, always, and happy to be here. The mindfulness part, for me, I think maybe the way I think is slightly different. I like chasing shiny objects. So if there's a shiny object, I will chase it. I will check it out and see if it's worthwhile, and I'll keep it in mind. Maybe the next time around I'll come back to it, and maybe we'll extract value out of it. So I do spend a lot of energy looking at shiny objects. So it's kind of I use that as a fallback. If a particular strategy that I apply does not work, then I know that I have already explored these other strategies or other technologies, and I'm aware of those things. So I think the other point that I put in the board was around, yeah, so when you do go down after, if you do chase a shiny object, remember what you learned from chasing that. So, and the asynchronous communications, I think that's very good for a firefight. If you want to fight or have a peaceful consensus, having I think decoupling the thing that needs to be achieved and who's waiting for that to be achieved. When you have it asynchronous, like, so I hand off a task before I clock off, and somebody in the other part of the world is doing that task and coming back to me the next day with all the information rolled up already. So we're never in the same time to have actual firefight, but we've kind of built our communication in such a way that we hand off at every so it's less immediate kind of approach. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but it kind of seems to work for a small team like the team I'm working. Yeah, so yeah, it is a complex world we're living in. No, I mean it's complexity is. I think it's going to be about managing complexity. I mean, it is about managing complexity. So, yeah, that's.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you. And I wonder if maybe the nature of your role, being a CTO, chasing shiny objects is kind of. It maybe less to a CIO than a CTO, I would imagine. So I think it's maybe perhaps related to the nature of your role.
A lot of exploration
and innovation
yeah, you cannot innovate without exploring what are the possibilities. So you do have to let your mind wander,
experiment,
and map out where you wander. You build a map of everything all the places that you wander. So it requires mindfulness of your mind, where it's going and what you learn from where it went.
Be mindfully distracted.
Yes, mindfully distracted.
Mindfully distracted. Yeah. No, I agree. Like it. Thanks, Stephen. Alex, I'm sure you have something to share, thoughts, questions. I'd love to hear from you as well.
Well, first of all, it's a big pleasure to be part of the community. And today it's very interesting topic regarding projects and people who actually deliver this project. I think that to choose what is strategic and what is important here and now is a big challenge for every organization. And in fact, we as a leader, I completely agree, need to step in and help customers, help team, help people who make a decision to choose these right projects, to understand what's important versus what's not. And I would call it even education. Bring different practices, bring different options, how to treat projects, how to actually make things happen, but do not burn out your team, because everything is important. That's no question. I'm from retail, and in retail, if you do not run, you will be lost. You always need to innovate. You always need to deliver something, to be on top, to drive sales. But at the end, everything is delivered by people, and people should have a purpose. People should have a feeling that what they do is really important, and it helps organization, it help your company, it help your team to become a little bit better than yesterday. So it's my little bit income.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, I think I heard everyone's voice, so I'm kind of happy. We have 8 minutes left. And I'd love to hear, I hope you don't want your money back and you got something from this discussion today. So I'd love to hear from each one of you, and I might call with the sequence that is on my screen, and hear from you. What's the one thing, the one thing that you learn, or an insight, or you're taking away from this 1 hour and a half that you invested of your life that is never going to get back, these precious 90 minutes. So if you had to name one thing, a learning or insight, what is the takeaway? So starting with the first person on top left-hand corner on my screen is our guest speaker, Mark Cameron. So Mark ended up staying until nearly the end. So Mark, what has been the key learning / takeaway for you?
My key learning is I'm just happy that people are having these conversations, to be honest. The fact that they're happening and people are discussing. I mean, this stuff isn't hard. It isn't easy. I mean, it's just trying to find different ways to navigate through an increasingly complex world. So the fact that there's people coming together and talking about it and trying to find ways through it, to me is great. And it's good to know that it's going on.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Marco.
Well, thank you. So I think the one thing I got was from something that Mark said, which is when we was talking about kind of the top leaders saying the soft stuff is the hard stuff. You kind of really got to focus in on that, because that's the kind of things that kind of set the tone for everyone else.
Thanks, Marco. Short and sweet. Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie, and thanks everybody. One of the things I've been struggling with is well, it's fine for us to be purposeful in what we choose, to do and not to do, and not try to do all the shiny things and so on. But we don't control all the people around us who are our customers and who are executives, and so how do we get our organization to be a bit purposeful and focused in that way that doesn't drive everybody crazy? I know that's not a very good term to use these days, but you know what I mean. And one thing that we identified is, well, it's not about finding all the things we might do. It's actually choosing some things we're not going to do. And actually, one way to do that is to say, what's the one thing, you asked us this question a moment ago, Natalie, what's the one thing that I can do to help the organization move forward? And sometimes that's the one thing that I can do to look after myself or my people is the one thing that I must do. And that was a powerful takeaway for me. In other words, the one thing that I can do is not
the one thing,
the top priority project for the organization.
There's actually a book called The One Thing, fascinating book, really recommend. Thanks so much, Andrew. Thank you. David Cooper.
I guess, coming from a smaller organization, I was always jack of all trades and had to be a master of everything. And really, you don't become a master of everything, you're just across everything. And I think, that feedback around, having people around you that complement your skills is really important, because I'm looking at structure of my organization, and it's really important that we understand that it's okay to have not all the skills in the right basket. You're there to do something strategic, fill your gaps with your team.
Thanks, David. Stephen, back to you. Final takeaway, if there is one thing, perhaps one thing that you're taking away from being back in your second roundtable here, what would that be?
Well, I kind of like what Mark said about about dealing with the complexity that's arising, and it's a different format. Like we are meeting in a different format. We're literally personified in a virtual environment, and being mindful about the communication and interactions over a digital thing, over a digital platform is something that is very interesting, and I think that's going to change further in in ways I can't imagine. So yeah, I'm just quite excited about having these kind of meetings and talking to people who have, different insights and contradictory to your own insights or complementary. I think both are good to have. Yeah, so that's my takeaway. It's definitely a different perspective on mindfulness. It's mindfulness virtual on digital. So
Beautiful.
I can't hear if you're breathing hard enough.
Thanks, Stephen. And that's spot on. Spend our thinking with different and contradictory sometimes perspective. That's all about. Thank you. And Alex, maybe final words in terms of your learning from today.
As for me, I really like the idea that strategic meetings and strategic sessions should be not about what we actually do, but what we actually not going to do. So to find out these things, to find out one important thing out of everything. So that's an idea I like.
Excellent. Okay, I'm glad sorry for being a time Nazi, but I was just conscious of time and I really want to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to, sorry if I cut you off in any stage. So I'm glad that everyone had a chance to share the takeaway from today. So we've done this already. And I will share in the chat the feedback form survey. When you get a chance, if you could take 2 minutes to complete, that would be super helpful. Thanks for everyone who did last month. You might have no different comments today. And, given that you enjoyed it so much and really good to hear from, especially you, Stephen and Mark, that you feel that those conversations are important, then highly encourage you to, spread the message. We're having the next working group meeting. Andrew mentioned that the need for us to perhaps, grow this community. I think it's interesting because having this small group, we have this very intimate kind of, connection, but it might be worthwhile to expand. We had a couple of apologies today, but it would be good to have more people having this conversation, I suppose. So spread the word. Invite peers or teams that people that you believe that would make a good contribution and would be benefit for them to join the conversation. So with that said, this is almost unseen. We have finished early, couple of minutes early. We usually go over time. So thanks so much, everyone, again for being here, for giving 90 minutes of your precious time. Thanks so much, Mark, for being on our spotlight today and hanging out with us until the end. So great to have you here. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I see you next month.
See you guys. Good to meet you all.
Okay, bye for now.